Um, Again, it's not something I would have myself, but it is something I've kind of wanted in my collection for a little while. Helped by the fact that it has been on discount for quite some time, and I placed the order from CK Model Cars not too long ago, and they were having Bentleys on sale. And as is the case when I'm getting something from overseas, I need to pack the box. So I finally committed to getting this model. So as I said, the model comes from Paragon, and it is. I got it for like about $40, $45. I can't remember what the exchange rate was on it. And for the price that I paid for it, I'm pretty happy with it. I probably wouldn't be quite so much if I had paid the like full dealer price. So this is a dealer edition model. So the paint on it is pretty good. The grills are open. Well, let me take that back. The BMW grill, the kidney grills, those are open. All the other grills in the car are sealed, as is the case for most models nowadays. Um, Wheels are nicely done. The brake rotors are plastic, but from not too far away, you can't really tell. And it presents pretty good. One thing that Paragon did that I like is I forgot what it's called, but the black trim that goes around the edge of your windshield and window glass and door glass and such. Uh, they have that painted on the inside of the glass where it should be. Whereas some other folks, like Norrev, like to paint it on the outside, and you get like a little bitty lip, and because it's paint, you have uh, orange peel, and so it just doesn't look right. So they did do that, so that's thumbs up to them. Although they did not do it on the door glass, so you can see like the pillar, the B pillar. So win some, lose some. Uh, Other thing I like that Paragon did is this particular model is a dark gray, and they gave it a light-ish colored interior instead of going with the typical black. And the interior is pretty well done. Buttons are nicely molded. They're not really labeled. Some model makers actually try to label their buttons, even though you can't read them. You can at least make out that there are some distinct letters there. Paragon didn't try to do that at all, but it doesn't really detract from the look of the model. Seat belts are fabric, unlike vinyl that AutoArt is doing for double the price. So overall, it's a pretty good model, especially for the price that I paid for it. And it is a model that's discounted just about everywhere, with maybe the exception of eBay. Like you can even go to the BMW dealer and pick this up for about $50 to $55. So if you like ugly SUVs that don't really serve a purpose, go check one out.
All I have to say is that for as much hate as the Nissan Murano Cross Cabrio got,
Well deserved.
well deserved, ugly thing. But looking at this, I'm thinking BMW was looking at those going, yes,
Hold my beer.
we can do that successfully. And they haven't done it successfully because that looks atrocious. But I'm sure Karen loves taking her kids to soccer practice in it.
Yes, well, somebody certainly likes it because we started with the X6, we went to the X4. Mercedes has their own version in the GLC coupe, and maybe the GLE coupe. Not certain. I don't know, but yeah. Acura with the RDX, Honda with the Cross Tour.
The Cross Tour I can almost forgive because it sits a little too high, but put it on some lowered springs, put in some coilovers, and you basically have an affordable Porsche Panamera. Let's be real, though. The Panamera is not really a station wagon, but it's also too big to be just a coupe.
Yeah, but
It's also slow.
That's the
The Honda, I
Panamera.
mean, the
Oh,
Honda.
let's say what? But yeah, that's. I was gonna say that's a stretch, but I guess if you were to lower across to her, yeah, it's still probably taller than the Panamera. But okay, I could see it.
It's like a
But
Chinese knockoff Panamera.
yes, that's the other
Huh.
thing to go back to the BMW. Why I kind of don't really understand it. Uh, at least, well, I take that back because the X6 did come first, but then they later also, brought out the Gran Turismo versions. So, like, why would you take an X4? Like, yeah, if you're looking at an X4 versus a 4 Series Gran Turismo, not to be confused with the Grand Coupe, what's the difference between them? Other than, I guess, maybe one might sit a little taller, but like, I can't imagine that there's a distinct enough market between the 4 Series Gran Turismo buyer and the X4 buyer that you can justify having two vehicles. But yeah, they do. So what do I know?
I kind of wonder if it's something to do with insurance. Not necessarily that BMW's looking at insurance pricing, but if the average buyer was buying the Gran Turismo and finding that insurance was very expensive, but on a crossover it was cheaper.
Maybe I don't think that that's the case, and I don't think that it would, even if there's a difference in insurance costs between them. I don't think it's significant enough to justify two very, very similar products. Like in the case of, and I don't know in the case of the 4 Series, but I know like when the 5 Series Gran Turismo came out, it was a little bit bigger than the X6. So if you wanted an ugly crossover coupe hatchback looking thing, but you still wanted to have your utility, then you would have got the 5 Series because they had the bigger back seat. I think it had a larger cargo area. If you were actually trying to get a true coupe, and I don't mean that the X6 is a coupe because it's a four door, it's SUV, but a coupe in the sense that you are giving up, rear seat room, giving up cargo carrying. If that's what you wanted, then that's what the X6 was. So, but anyway, uh, like I said, I don't get them, but they're around. So that's which is why I don't work for a auto manufacturer because I would just be like, just make a station wagon
Yeah,
and
if I
and
worked for a dealership, I'd be at the dealership going, "No, that's
be
stupid. Why would you buy
be
that?"
be wondering why the sales are tanking.
So now that we've
So,
gotten all of our SUV crossover listeners to leave,
mhm.
I don't really have a model to talk about per se. Although I'm holding in my hands right now a Matchbox Volkswagen Golf Country, which is the lifted Golf that was made way back when. I think this is a Mark II, and it's kind of the same concept. And I'm looking at it like, yeah, that's a good looking little car. I would rock one of those. But anyway,
Yeah, but
uh,
see, like that was a lifted car, not a truck that's trying to like because before we started recording, we were talking about the AMC Eagle
right.
and why is it that you like the Eagle but don't like something like an X4? Like the Eagle to me presented everything that the car that it was based off of had, just with added um, added
Off road capability.
functionality to it. So if you were someplace that had a lot of snow, and because also you got to think of too, like back when that car came out, all of your trucks were like truly trucks. They were more work vehicles, not really quite so much daily driver type vehicles. Maybe the Suburban fit in that, and I'm not saying you couldn't daily a pickup back in the day, but you know that market wasn't really quite there. Most people who had pickups, you had one because you needed a pickup.
Right.
So if you were someplace that snowed or you didn't have paved roads that you drove on or whatever, okay, yeah, you could have an Eagle. Like all you needed was a little 2-door, 4-door car, but you just need some foul weather capability. All right, that car gave it to you, kind of like what Subarus were, and I guess to a certain degree still are. Uh, so that was what that did. Whereas these coupe SUVs is taking functionality away in the name of style, and I don't think they're particularly good looking. So like you didn't get style out of it, but and you lost cargo. But anyway,
But people are buying them.
yeah.
So,
So, but that's a car podcast. That's a car podcast, which we're not. We're a toy car podcast.
hey, man, sometimes toy cars and real
Yes.
cars go hand in hand. So,
Yeah, that's true.
speaking
Uh,
of which, I don't have a model particularly to talk about because I bought some wheels for my real car. I got some OZ Racing Super Turismo LMs, and I would just kind of happen to be looking at some of the models that I have here on my shelf, and I noticed I have a Chevy Cruze Chinese touring car and a Auto Art Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 5. Both of them have OZ Racing Super Turismo, the GT wheels, so there's a slightly different hub, but they're essentially the same wheel. Now, the Chevy doesn't have any branding on the wheel, but it is the exact same wheel as what's on the Auto Art. The Auto Art does have OZ Racing branded center caps, quote unquote center caps, which, made me start kind of looking around at some of my other models to see if they had aftermarket wheels that were actually branded or not. For the most part, no, but it still makes me wonder about how do model companies go about licensing either aftermarket wheels or the OEM wheels. Like I have my Mark One Volkswagen Golf that has the Pirelli P wheels. I have the Auto Art Honda Ballad with the four circle, I don't know the name of them, the very 80s four circle wheels. I feel like those are very unique to the car and not just a generic like a Steely. And I don't know if there'd be any licensing that would have to go into getting approval to make that wheel, or if these companies are flying pretty under the radar of major car manufacturers that they don't really care.
yeah. I think it's a little bit of both. So, because you'll see, or you at least you used to see, like say for instance with tires, where um, you get a model and the tire tread would resemble the tire tread that came on a particular car, but that tire did not say Michelin, Pirelli, Goodyear, whatever it is. Um, the So when it comes to the wheels, like I said, I think it's a little bit of the same thing because the manufacturers aren't really making those wheels. They're probably designing the wheels in terms of what they want to look like, but then they go to a wheel company and have them make your wheels. So if you have, for instance, a BMW, I'll just use that as an example. All right, your wheels may still be made by BBS or made by OZ or whoever. Um, they just aren't branded with that manufacturer's name on it.
Right.
So, so that would come just with the license that they get to make the car is the license to make the wheel that comes on the car. Now, when you get some special edition cars where now they are saying, and it comes with BBS wheels, and like for instance, I used to have a Volkswagen Passat, and my Passat had BBS wheels,
Yeah, a
and they
lot of
had
the old 80s, and maybe even 90s Volkswagens had
Yeah,
branded BBS wheels.
and that's exactly what it was. My wheel caps said BBS. They did not say Volkswagen, but these were the factory wheels. So, in a situation like that, then they probably would have to get a license from BBS, even if not necessarily for the design of the wheel, but just to use the BBS name. Then they have to get the license to be able to do that. And I think you probably don't see it that much, mostly because you buy a wheel, the wheel is going to be branded with whatever the manufacturer for the car is, not so much the wheel manufacturer.
Right. I'm just looking around at some of my other models, and you mentioned that the tires. Uh, I'm looking at my Spark LM Honda LMP2 car, which has Dunlop. I mean, they're slick, so there's no tread, but it does say
Mhm.
Dunlop along the sides.
Yeah. Well, for race cars, you would see that. But typically, your street car models generally don't have branding. And it's
Unless maybe it's a
it's and
period
it's a
kind
hit or
of.
miss. It's a hit or miss thing. Like I have some old Maestos from the 90s, early
Right.
2000s that did have branded tires, you know. Uh, but most of my other models from that time, like say my UTs or some of my early Auto Arts, did not. But Auto Art has been doing that of late. So they put some kind of, it's not branded necessarily like you would see the actual tire, but it still may say Michelin on it. And like if I look at this X4 that I have here, it doesn't say anything. It's just a tire. And again, that's because they would have to get um, the license from that company to use their name, their yeah, to use their name or whatever, because of course every Goodyear and Pirelli and whoever, their name as it's printed on the tire, it's their logo. So you have to get authorization to use that. So that's probably why you don't see um, most street cars with branding. I think there's an expectation on the race car side of things to have that, so they just pony up the
Right.
money for it.
Yeah, I'm looking now at my GMP. Uh, I forget which one it is. I think it's the Nova by Berger that has the white letter tires, Goodyear tires, whereas my Yenko and my Street Fighter Novas are blank. So, but I also think that Berger Nova is the oldest one out of the trio.
Mm-hmm. The other thing too, like in that case, is uh, like if that Berger Camaro, if it's modeled after a particular car, then it would be correct to have those wheels. Whereas I know with the Street Fighter cars, those are kind of more fantasy cars. Like, yeah, you can see a Nova that's done like that, but it's not modeled after a particular Nova.
Right.
So they, have some amount of artistic freedom to, do whatever it is they want to do. And I don't know what those are like, but I have some GMP wheels, some older GMP wheels that came on some of their Street Fighter cars, and the tire tread is just a generic uh, tread of a tire type that was commonplace way back in the day. It was like this V shape. Think almost like a get your gator back, um, which you don't really see too many cars or too many tires using that type of tread pattern now. But that was a somewhat popular type of design. So it's just a generic tire tread on a generic wheel. So yeah, there's no branding on it.
Right. Yeah, it's just interesting to me to see just the very, especially on the tuner cars,
Hmm.
like the ABT Audis from GT Spirit, or some of the older auto arts that have pretty intricate designs on their wheels, which they're obviously real wheels. It's not like they're fantasy wheels, but they took a lot of time to make sure these wheels all looked good and period correct. And I kind of also wonder if the wheels are something that are implied when they go to, say, Honda, and they say they want to make the Honda Ballad model. Like, what goes into the design of the wheel at that point? Do they take a sketch and say this is exactly what we want to make, or do they have someone at Honda kind of say, well, this is the wheels that came on the car, so these are the ones you're allowed to use?
Um, Probably both. So I I know for certain uh, when the manufacturer is working with auto manufacturer is working with the model maker, there is some communication, some back and forth with approvals, and occasionally you'll see somebody talk about that. Like for instance, Auto Art just recently, I believe it was for their Bugatti Chiron. Um, it might have been the street car, but it could have been the whatever that race car thing that they got. I'm not certain what it is, what it's called. I don't know if it's a Chiron GT or whatever. But anyway, they mentioned that it was being that was going back to Bugatti for final approval. So somebody at Bugatti is looking it over and saying, okay, yes, we approve this as it is. And there have been times where manufacturers have released cars, and the collectors have griped about choices made or whatever, and they'll come back and say, well, look, this is what so and so said. Again, Auto Art kind of caught some flack with that with their Porsche 918 model because they had initially showed it with the engine cover removed. Well, at some point, I guess Porsche said, no, we don't want that to be a removable piece. So, although you still can take it off, but like the bit of the engine that you could see under it, Auto Art didn't do any further work to detail, to mold in any additional detail, or even like any kind of painting or anything like that. So when you take it off, there's this kind of like silver ish looking blob of just whatever plastic that's just sitting there. Um, but again, it's because the manufacturer allegedly, I should say, said no, we don't want this part to come off. And it kind of makes some sense because if you actually do have a 918, you as an owner can't take that engine cover off. At least not without going through a whole bunch of effort. It's only meant to come off in the service base. So usually the manufacturers do have quite a bit of say, but that's again speaking from the standpoint of a dealer edition model. Now, if you think about somebody like, say, for instance, Ignition, okay, I don't think Ignition is necessarily working with Nissan to put out, you know, their models because the only Nissan about those cars is okay. Yeah, it's a Skyline, but it's a highly customized Skyline. It's nothing came out of Nissan's factory like what Ignition is doing. So that would be the other side. They're doing what they want to do.
But
So
then would they have to go to, let's say, Liberty Walk and ask for permission to use their body kit? I'm assuming yes.
I'm assuming yes as well. That is one that I'm not completely certain. of. Because like just recently there was something where who is it? GT Spirit had shown that they did a Porsche. It's a Porsche 993 911. It's not a Singer. Was it Gunther